And we won't get into any meat, but Valerie and I will just do a little 1 minute chat while we let people come in. But
Yes, see all
we
of you.
uh, we probably met most of you or all of you at a DeW retreat one of these days, or maybe you're just joining in because you know somebody from a DeW retreat. You're all welcome. We're so happy to have you here because Valerie and I love to evangelize about strengths. It's been so life-changing for all of us. So we just love it. At the last DeW retreat, we focused on a particular aspect of strengths, but we did not do the all 34 because we'd done it so many other times. And so some people did miss that sort of foundational information to make it all make so much more sense. So we're providing that now, and it's being recorded so that everybody will have this in the future if they want to revisit, and Anne will have it on her site. And but I just want you to know that it is such a boost for Valerie and me when we spend time with the DEWs. We just love the energy and we love the entrepreneurship and the women lifting up women and all of the beautiful things that come out of DEW. And so we thank you for taking your time to be with us today. And Valerie, I'll turn it over to you so that you have some, can give a little hello.
Absolutely. So I'm delighted to be with all of you again. So many beautiful faces from our time at DEW, and we just. I have to reiterate what Leanne said. It's always such a joy and a pleasure to be with women from the DEW community. There's something very special about our DEWs. And so whatever we can do to pour into you, it is our joy and our love to do that. And so we're delighted for you to join us today. Please, if you have questions, if there's something that's confusing, if it didn't make sense, we really missed the opportunity to do this before the retreat. So we decided next time that's what we would do, is we would do this little intro session prior to, so that all the newbies would have a chance to kind of get caught up. So we apologize that you might have felt a little lost there that day, but we're hoping that we can make up for it today. So
Yeah, and as Valerie said, feel free to unmute and speak up or raise your hand. We'll try to monitor the chat if anybody wants to put anything in chat. So just we can make this interactive as well, but we're gonna, it's an informational session, but that doesn't mean we can't chat. So feel free to talk. Shall we jump in now? Valerie, you good with that? Let me see if I can share. Yeah, it looks like I can share my screen. So I'm going to put up a slideshow because we're going to talk through some slides, and so away we go. Slideshow.
come on,
Hello.
slideshow.
It's of course covering up what I have to click. Okay, slideshow from beginning. Okay. And we are strength savvy. And Valerie and I started our business 7 years ago because we both became aware of strengths and too, actually through our church, but it was actually created as a secular um, informational personality assessment. But but at any rate, we used it in our church too with great results. So we all got to know each other and really grew to love strengths. The whole concept of it, it's been life-changing for all of us. And so we're going to go through a little of the background for you and help you to understand what we love about it. Um, so basically, and we're going to skip the background about ourselves, like a deep background about ourselves, because we've said it so many times that we don't want to take the time to do that. But strengths began with a very brilliant and astute gentleman named Donald Clifton, and he worked at the University of Nebraska, and he was in the psych department, and he noticed that certain of the counselors were really, really, really good at what they did, and that everybody wanted those people as counselors. Other ones they had were terrible at it, and people did not want to use those people as their counselors. And so he started really becoming very intrigued by this concept and started thinking about what made them good at what they did. And he became really, really astute at choosing counselors for that psych department. And so he just became a master at that. And so this sparked an idea in him that there were certain patterns of behavior that were interesting, and people had different patterns of behaviors. And he became fascinated by this. So he assembled a giant team and they canvassed the globe and they interviewed about 2 million people collectively. When they got all this information, they brought it back and they kind of laid it all out. And they distilled it actually initially into about 100 different categories of strengths, or talent themes is another thing that they talk about. And they felt like that was too overwhelming. So they distilled it even further and they came up with 34 different groupings of behavior patterns. And they call them talent themes, strengths. There's a couple of names for them. We're just going to collectively refer to them as strengths. But this study was rooted in what people are excellent at. Donald Clifton was not interested in all the ways that we need to improve to show up like this person wants or that person wants. He wanted people to really connect with their areas of excellence. It's about what is right with people. And so when you learn about your strengths, it's not really like, oh, you have this collection of strengths, you should do this, but it tells you how you show up and how you might bring those strengths to your life, to your career. I made a career choice that was wrong, that actually pulled from my very lowest one. And I found out later, when I moved out of it pretty quickly, I found out later why that wasn't right for me. So it's really good to make sure you're not working in the things that are really challenging for you. But aligning your life with your strengths is really the goal. Is if you can be called to do those things that you naturally do well, the things that you would do even if nobody paid you, things that are as natural as breathing, that's what you want out of strengths, or that's what you want out of your life, and strengths will help you to get there.
Mhm. And what I find fascinating, and just as a PS, this slide is needs to be updated. It's now 30 million people, over 30 million people across the globe have taken the strengths assessment. So you are in very good company. But what I thought was really fascinating is that it's based in neuroscience. So this is not just something that's like, oh, somebody came up with, or something kind of, for lack of a
A
better word.
Cosmo quiz.
Yeah, a Cosmo quiz or an airy fairy thing that somebody just came up with over cocktails. It's based in neuroscience. So your brain literally lights up when you're operating in your strengths. They've proven it. They have all the science behind it. So that's one thing to note. But what really kind of struck me when we were learning about it is that, we all fail to appreciate our strengths. Most people think nothing of them. They're like breathing. So it's like, what's the big deal? Doesn't everybody do that? What do you mean that's a strength? In fact, some people even see them as weaknesses sometimes. So strength psychology to me was such a huge aha, because I was like, wow, if we embrace what we're really great at, we pour more into that, we do more of that, that's what's going to make us, successful and happy and able to contribute at the highest possible level. When we fail to do that, when we are trying to do what we're not, we're at the bottom of our list and we're just pulling on all that stuff that's just the worst of us. We only are ever going to get mediocre results. And that's what they've proven through all the decades of research. But, the fact that we don't appreciate our own strengths and we're blind to them kind of made me sad in a way, because, we don't see our beauty, just like that video that we had at the end of DeW, where women saw themselves one way, but then when someone, described them, there was a whole different picture, right? We fail to see our own beauty, and that includes our strengths. And sometimes we just don't recognize them because we're just sort of oblivious. So strength psychology helps you to understand that you are so incredibly specially made. I mean, you're so unique. And Leanne flip the slide for me. But you are so specially unique that to share your strengths with the same people, like in the same exact order, the top 5 is 1 in 275,000. If you share your top 5 in the same exact order, I'm sorry, that was any order, then the same exact order is 1 in 33 million. So that just tells you how special you are, how you are just this beautiful, conglomeration of fabulous talents, and why we always just say, I have other gifts, and embrace that, because, if you can just see what other people see, is what we often say. That's what strengths kind of helps you to understand, is that we're all different. And if we can appreciate how every one of us has something amazing to bring to the table, but it's just different. And if we can appreciate that in each other, that's also part of the goal. So yeah.
Okay, and I've gotten a call to mention stories. So so we are going to I'm going to share my my background for some people that may have missed it, and Valerie will do the same. So just a chat call for stories. So so I will tell you that when I was growing up, I had a father who was a self-employed CPA, and he felt like accounting was the greatest thing that anybody could do. You know, he loved being a CPA. The funny thing was is that he did so much less CPAing that he did talking with his clients and hanging out with them and planning vacations. But he was extraordinarily talented. And so when I was growing up, he said he wanted me to go to Notre Dame, study accounting, work for a big accounting firm, and then come back and take over his business. And so this sounded like a fine plan to me. I was very flattered that out of four kids, he would pick me for his you know, to be his heir to his business. And so so I did just that. I went to Notre Dame, I studied accounting, but when I was coming out, I started to kind of feel a little panicky because even though I loved numbers, I love a great spreadsheet, and numbers are very beautiful to me. There was something about the idea of doing that for the rest of my life that was really unsettling for me. So I ended up taking a job with a company that did litigation support consulting. So it did financial analysis and litigation. So there was stories and intrigue and conflict, and it seemed like way more exciting. But I could still use my financial skills. Yet every single day when I would wake up, and it was great people, really smart, fun people, I would go head to toe and think, does anything hurt bad enough that I could call in sick? Every day I had that dreaded feeling that I did not want to go in to that office and do what I had to do. It just didn't fit. There was something wrong with it. So anyway, but the days that the company had really aggressive recruiting goals, and on the days that I got to go in and entertain a candidate for lunch and tell them about the company, try to figure out if they'd be a good fit for the company and figure out how to get them if they were a good fit. Those were the days that I would jump and skip into work like my hair was on fire. I couldn't wait to get there. And so finally, I kind of figured out, okay, there's a really stark difference about how I feel when I do these different things. And so I went to the HR department. And I asked them if they could use additional help in recruiting because I really loved it. And they said, yes, we've had our eye on you, but we couldn't ask anybody to come off of chargeable work. But yes, we want you, we'll take you. And I moved from accounting into HR, never looked back, spent the rest of my career happily doing HR. And it wasn't until I did this assessment back in 2009, and I'm just going to stop the share for a second. Back in 2009, that I realized why. So I mentioned the bottom of my list was discipline, and discipline is I'm not disciplined. I don't like structure. I was absolutely appalled that I had to be at work at 8:30 every day, like not just twice, but every day. And so I was just like so overwhelmed by that. And just that accounting and financial analysis and stuff is coloring in the lines. Like you go to jail if you color outside the lines in accounting, and I'm a color outside the lines kind of gal. And my strengths, as you can see from over here, strategic, maximizer. Maximizers like to make things the best. Strategic like to have an efficient way to reach your goal. Positivity, look for the glass half full. Ideation likes to come up with new ideas, and woos love to meet people. And so we'll go a little deeper on those in a minute. But I was not using any of those in accounting, none. But when I was in HR, I was using all of them, blowing them up. And so it wasn't until I saw this 100 years later that I was like, oh my gosh, no wonder I hated accounting. It's perfectly wonderful field for so many people. It was not right for me. And but HR was so right for me, and it used my skills. And so that's when I became really an evangelist about trying to figure this stuff out for yourself. I wanted people to know their greatness. My favorite thing is to hold up a mirror to somebody and show them their excellence so that they can start to connect with the things. Like, I always knew what I was good at. We all know what we're good at, but we don't necessarily look at it through this lens. And there's something about this lens that has a little magic in it that is pretty remarkable. So at any rate, that's my little story. And I'm just going to turn it over to Valerie for her little story.
Well, the reason I fell in love with strengths is, I have a background where I've always loved self-help books. And anyone else out there, like, love all that, love psychology. Yeah. So I was always reading stuff and couldn't wait to share it with people. I've always been that person. And um, the whole time I was in my corporate career, I absolutely detested performance reviews. Does anybody out there love those? I don't know anyone who does. They're typically very demoralizing. They're not helpful. They don't make anyone feel better. They don't inspire anyone. I just hated it. I hated the whole process because it's all about what's wrong with you, finding something you had to work on, something you had to fix, and the whole thing just irritated me to no end. So when I had taken every assessment under the sun, I've done DISC and 360 and strong and you name it, I've taken it. But this was the only one that I was like, wow, they finally get it. Because strength psychology is all about embracing what's really great about you and then soaring with that, but partnering with people who have what you don't have or leveraging what you don't have instead of focusing on what you don't have, right? So I was so excited to file this, and I become a strengths coach, and I take this home to my family, super excited to share it with them. I have a 17-year-old son at the time, and he's getting ready to go off to college. So all I can think of is, oh, this is so great. This is really going to be a great tool to help you figure out what to do with your life. I wish I had known this when I was a kid. Take this test. So he's a 17-year-old boy. What do boys do? They just go to like, yeah, whatever, mom, throws it back at me, doesn't even look at it. So I, can't wait to see what the results are. I'm opening it up and I'm looking at it, and oh my gosh, it was this moment of complete and utter like shock, because I thought to myself, here's this kid that I've been raising for 17 years. I've spent every day with him for 17 years, and I don't know who he is. Like, what is the deal? I don't get this. But also what happened was the light bulb started going off, because all of a sudden it made all the sense in the world. His number one is adaptability. He flies by the seat of his pants. Everything is mañana, mañana, mañana. He's in the moment. It's all about now. Don't worry about the future. Don't make a plan. Just do whatever, right? And he likes that last minute pressure of having to get everything done. He needs a last minute deadline. That's what motivates him. Meanwhile, I'm a maximizer, number one. I love to do things with time. I want to do it weeks ahead because I want it to be the best it can possibly be. I always want to put my best foot forward. When he went out for tennis, I was like, well, get out there 6 months ahead of time and start practicing so you'll be your best when you go out for the team. He picks up his racket the night before and he expects to make the team. It made me even crazy. Like, we were always butting heads because he was last minute everything. And I would have, I'm like always ahead of time, right? So the last straw was when he, put in his college applications 2 minutes before the deadline. And I'm like losing my mind because I would have had it in like weeks ahead of time. But that's just when our relationship. And I realized after I got his results, I was like, oh my gosh, this kid is not trying to drive me crazy. He's not trying to be disobedient. He's not trying to make me miserable. He's not trying to buck the system. He's just wired completely differently than I am. So we're both going to get to the same result. We're just going to get there entirely differently. And that's okay. I ended up respecting that that was his process, and that his process would never be my process, and vice versa. We're just different. And ever since then, our relationship did a complete 360. Now I get it. And so when I saw that, in addition to how this can help teams and team building and engagement and communication and all of that, but when I saw that it could heal relationships in your family, it could heal your partner, relationships with your partner, with your parents, with your siblings, with people in your life, like the people you love, I was like, oh man, everybody's got to know this stuff. This is too powerful. This is too important. People need to understand how this works. So that's how I got on fire about strengths.
Okay. And Anna's announced in the chat that strengths made a huge difference in her family too. And we won't ask her because she can't speak, but
poor woman can't talk today.
you feel free to raise your hand and tell us about it if you feel like you can talk. Okay. So oh, she's going to talk. Okay, great. Go ahead, Anne.
Oh, I just want to. Oh, maybe I can't talk. I just want to say that it made me understand everybody better and understand myself. And part of what I want for you guys is to fall in love with yourselves. and then you'll fall in love with others for who they are. So go ahead, Leanne. And
Yeah.
Valerie, you're
Okay.
doing a great job. Thanks.
Thanks, Anne. Um, okay, so we are, let me just see if I can advance this thing.
So any
Being a
questions
little
so far?
squeaky.
Anybody have a question they want to shout out so far? Nope.
Okay.
Good.
And when I have this up, I cannot see the chat anymore. So so I would just say if you have something to say, just unmute yourself and speak up.
Shout it
So
out.
right now we are going to go through the 34 strengths one by one. And Valerie, take it away.
Right. So achievers, the first one. And as you can imagine, these are folks who love to get things done. They just want to keep produce, like the Energizer Bunny. Once they're done with one thing, they're right on to the next. These are folks who love to accomplish goals. A lot of times they, have a checklist. I live by my lists. This is my number 5. So, I often will make a list and I'll move things to another list just for the satisfaction of crossing it off. Anybody have that? Raise your hand if you're got that same issue as I do. I just, I don't really feel good unless I've been able to accomplish things during the day. So it's very hard for me sometimes to relax. And sometimes it's hard for achievers to, celebrate that they finished something before they move on to something else. Like to take that moment to be like, yes, I did it, and then to celebrate that. A lot of times achievers just keep on going. They just don't stop. They're very industrious.
Okay, great. And next up we have activator. I happen to know that Ann Duffy has this in her top 5. Is this your number 1, Ann?
No,
2.
2.
Okay, so activators are really quick off the blocks, like we're showing in the graphic here. These are people that ready, set, go, like they want to start now. If there's something that is needs to be done, they want to have it done now, or yesterday is even better. We have a good friend who is a high activator, and one of her kids came in and said, hey, I need to buy the book Romeo and Juliet for English class. And she's like, well, let's go now. Let's get in the car. And her daughter said, I don't need it for like another month. I just wanted to let you know I need it. And she's like, we're getting in the car now. We're going and getting it. So that's like kind of an extreme example of activators. Activators have to go now. They can get impatient with a lot of talk about what we have to do and how we're going to do it. They want to get started. If it's the wrong direction, they'll course correct along the way. But that momentum is really important to activators. So if you have an activator in your life, know that they're going to really need to be moving all the time in a forward direction, making progress. They want it to go fast. Okay.
Next up is adaptability. So this is what I was saying about my son. These are folks who are very creative, spontaneous, easygoing. They just go with the flow is sort of their whole makeup. I mean, if there's an like a river, they'll just go right around it. So they're wonderful in chaos. They are wonderful when things are in a crisis. They don't get, nothing ruffles their feathers. They're just totally like, hey, whatever goes, we'll make it happen. It's all good. So they're just very in the moment. They're all about the here and now. Anybody have adaptability high? Does that sound like anyone out there? Okay, next up.
Next up is analytical. And these are people who love, I always say the tagline for this is show me the data. And so these people like facts, figures, they love spreadsheets, they love data, trends. They are, if you've ever remember speaking of Cosmo quizzes, Cosmo quiz question, do you make your decisions with your head or your heart? Analyticals make it with their head. They want to see what's happened before, what the data shows, and that's going to really support their decision making. They're not going to go on gut relation or gut feelings. They're not going to go with just feelings. They're going to go with what they can see. Sometimes people with high analytical can be a little abrupt because they may not really be tuned in and tapped in or have that talent of seeing what other people are feeling or noticing what other people are feeling. So sometimes they may be a little bit, they may feel a little snippy to you. They're just being them. They're not trying to be harsh or unpleasant. They're just being who they are because it's so important for them to get the facts. And if they're not getting the facts, they can get a little impatient about getting the facts. So that's our analyticals.
And they love to ask questions. If you have somebody in your life who's always asking questions and wanting to learn and understand and know more, they may have analytical. Next up is a ranger, and Anne has this one too. These are folks who are masters of lots of moving parts. They just are fabulous with figuring out how to configure people or resources. It's a flexibility kind of thing where, they can move those puzzle pieces around just seamlessly, sort of like the conductor here. One piece goes here, one piece has to go there. If something drops off, we'll put this one there. So they're looking for the perfect configuration. They're looking for efficiency. One thing to know about them is that sometimes they come across as, oh, they're just moving things around for the heck of it. That's how it can be perceived, but it's not. They're looking for the perfect configuration. And maybe if they just move one little thing over here, it would be even better. So they're always looking for, to make things fit in just the right way.
And sometimes people with higher ranger also are really good at puzzles. So Andy, I don't know if we ever asked you this. Have you liked to put together puzzles in your life?
I know you've asked me this before. Not really. But I love arranging. I mean, I like to make sure that everything looks just so. And I love events and things like that, to put things together, like a dining room table set, or, something like that. That gives me joy.
It makes me smile. Go ahead, Leanne. Sorry.
Excuse me. Arrangers are good at events. They're good at like planning things. Like Anne does such a beautiful job with her retreat every year. They are good at arranging something. They're maximizing productivity or maximizing how something looks with what they do. And they oftentimes, and the reason I mentioned puzzles is a lot of arrangers really like doing puzzles, because it is that energy of taking little weird looking things and putting them together in a way that makes something very beautiful. And so that's the energy of the arranger.
And I was going to say a quick, cute story about Anne is when she did the virtual DeW, I went over to her house to help her put the boxes together. Everybody got a box with all of their little swag and goodies in the box, but she had an exact perfect way that everything should lay. And it just made me smile. I didn't say anything, but I was like, arranger, because all the little pieces had to go exactly in a certain place. And it was just so adorable. But it's just her arranger talent in spades. And that's just what they love to do. And it's a beautiful.
Yeah, that's not a traditional puzzle, but that's a puzzle, Anne. Like what you were doing was like putting it together.
I'm going to start taking up puzzles. I just haven't done that. I'm going to do it. Thank
you. I'll drop that off for a Christmas present.
You may decide you love them and didn't know it. See, there you go.
All right. Okay. Next up is, but you can take this one, Valerie. Can you guys see this? I have my little menu down here and I can't see the words. Can everybody see them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good.
So belief, and these are people who have core values that drive everything in their life. And it could be religious, it could be political, it could be social justice, it could be just the way they were raised. Anything that's like, it's just their core, like nothing deviates from that. They are very set on it. They won't be very flaky about it. One day they think one thing and the next day they think another. They are going to be dead set on that, and everything drives that. So whatever work they do, for example, has to be aligned with whatever that belief is. So these are people who just have very deep-seated core values and things that they just hold dear, and they are unshakable about them.
Next up is command. And we're showing this with a wonderful lady boss at the head of a table. These are people who are large and in charge. Interestingly, they don't always, operate at the top of the org chart or anything like that, but they are people who, if there is a vacuum in the leadership, they will stand up in that vacuum and they will start taking charge. And so, I worked at a pharmaceutical company, and the person who had command in her top 5 was the executive assistant to the CEO. She had the highest command of anybody in the office, and she was, did her work. But I'll tell you, if there was something going on, she stood up and she's like, "You do that, you do that," and it was beautiful. She was really living and stepping into her command. These are people who in an emergency will stand up and just say, this house is on fire, call 911, get the baby down the back stairs. They will, they have that taking charge energy, and they will do it, and they will make things happen with it. As kids, they might have been like kind of a bossy big sister or something like that. But when they grow up and grow into the full maturity of this particular strength, it shows up as a strong, charismatic leader.
Ooh, take this one, Leanne. This is your baby.
Okay. Next up is communication. This is my number 7. Anne has this high in her top 5. Number 3. Oh, 4. So communication, people with high communication typically overall are people who are extraordinary with words. They may have an excellent vocabulary. They may be an excellent writer. They may be an excellent public speaker. They may be excellent at chatting people up, or all of the above. But what you will find is that people with high communication, they like to talk. They tend to talk a lot, and you want to have them at their parties. If you have a try people at your party, invite somebody with high communication, because they will get the crowd talking and going, and make that fun. Usually they have a lot of stories to share. Like if driving into work, they'll come and meet up with the people. You're never going to believe what happened to me on the way to the office. And the exact same thing might have happened to somebody with low communication, but it wouldn't occur to them to tell it as a story. So people with high communication love those stories, love to use their words. They're very expressive, and they're just tend to be really, really fun to have around.
And my favorite communication story, real quick, I have to share this one because every time I think of it, it makes me smile. So we were coaching a group, and this one guy said, "Oh, I'm the kid who always got in trouble in class for talking too much, and my teacher got so fed up with me that she finally sat me in the back of the room between 2 hearing impaired kids. And so you know what I did? I just learned sign language because I have to talk." And it was so cute. I was like, that is the perfect epitome of a communication. Like, they cannot help themselves. They have to express how they feel, and they're very talkative, and usually the life of the party.
You can't keep a good communication person down, that's for sure.
Next up is competition, and these are folks who love to win. They want to be number 1 because number 2 is the first place loser. And they usually are all about comparisons, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to compare against other people. There are a lot of times they are comparing against themselves. But they are people who will bring others up and along. They'll see what other people are doing. If they're in a company, for example, they'll say, "Hey, our competitors are doing blah 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 blah. Let's do this, this, and this, and this." So they'll kind of lift everybody up and elevate everybody else as they go. So these people just love comparisons, and they love to win. They usually have a hard time when they lose. Sometimes they have to go away and lick their wounds a little bit. But they just want to win all the time, and they want to be on the best teams. They want to do the best job. They want to be number 1.
Next up is connectedness, and we show this one as a drop falling in water with the ripples going out. And that's the energy of connectedness. People with high connectedness are people who care very deeply about their actions and how they impact others. These are people that know that everything and this is my number 6, everything we do impacts humanity in some way or another, and we want it to be good. And so you want those ripples that emanate out of you to be causing good and creating good in the world. These are people also who have a high spiritual component. They believe in things that you can't see, hear, feel, or touch, that there are, kind of more of a spiritual nature to life, that things happen for a reason. We may not understand the reason, that there are things impacting us that we can't understand or know, and that we are all as a human family connected together. People with high connectedness also love to make connections for people. They love to, when somebody has a need and somebody else is could fill it, they create those connections for people.
They're very concerned about consequences. They believe that nothing happens, by accident. Everything happens for a reason. Consistency. These are folks who are rule followers. Typically, they believe that you should be rewarded based on merit. They don't like people to be treated unfairly. They want everyone to be treated the same. They usually level the playing field for people. Like, they're very good judges of what's right and wrong. But they just love to follow rules. They're very like, everyone, these are the rules. This way everybody knows how to behave, and this is what knows everybody has the right expectations. But they like things to be the same.
Next up is context, and we show this with a rear view mirror because these are people that love history. they like to look backwards at what happened in the past, and they like to use that to make sense of the present and to inform the future. And so, this is so funny because in our work, Valerie and I find that tends to be very low for most people. It's low for me, very high for my husband. My husband's a lawyer, and I have noticed that people who are in law often have this really high. And why that makes sense is that our nation or lawyers have to exist in that milieu of the law, and the law is based on things that have happened historically. And so somebody wrote that they have a strong sense of justice. Oh, that's probably talking about consistency, though. It would be interesting to see if Amy Wood is where her context is. But at any rate, so that the business of people with context is they keep us reminded, the rest of us who may not have this high, they keep us reminded about what happened. So we repeat things that were good, and we avoid repeating things that happened in the past that were not good. So they keep us from repeating our mistakes, but they have that love of history and what came before.
Deliberatives are people who are looking to minimize risk. So sometimes they seem like they're very slow to act because what they're doing is they're looking at everything very, very carefully. They're very careful decision makers. They're weighing everything, they're analyzing everything. And then once they figure out what they think the right way to proceed is, they will be like 200%, they are on it. But it takes them a while to get there because they're trying to go through all the pros and cons and deliberate and looking at everything very carefully. So they can be a little bit slower when it comes to action. They also are not very generous with praise. They're very careful also with what they say. So when a deliberative gives you a compliment, like my husband, you're just like, oh my gosh, what? Because they're very, very careful about what they say, what they do, decisions they make. They're just very careful. They're very conscientious, very, very profound thinkers when it comes to making decisions.
Yes. And Valerie, did you say about avoiding risk? Did you say, I don't mean to repeat you? Okay. Okay, great.
Their whole point is that they want to avoid risk.
And
So
Valerie, take this one because this is high. Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of my 5. And developers are people who love to see others grow. So they're the cheerleaders, the mentors, the teachers. They're very, very good with inexperienced people. They're very patient in that way. And they really hate wasted potential. I mean, that for me, I'm a developer, and it just breaks my heart when I see somebody not live up to what they can be, the best that they can be. So between my maximizer and my developer, look out, because I'm always like, yeah, you can do better, you can be this, you can do that. So usually we're the cheerleaders, we're the ones who nurture people. And we just love to see people shine. So look for the best in others.
One of the things I always think about, 2 things that I think about with developer. I think about like a physical therapist. Developer is a physical therapist is somebody who works with somebody who's really struggling, and whether they're struggling to walk or whatever, that they will notice the fine little bits of improvement, and they'll celebrate those fine little bits of improvement. And I always think a developer is a wonderful talent for a parent to have, because little wee kids are a mess, and they sometimes need a lot of patience, and so the developer is going to have a lot of patience. And I see Margie is raising her hand. Margie, can you just speak out, and then we'll be able to see you?
Yeah, Margie, actually.
Margie, sorry.
That's okay. So you, on our badges and on your background, we had the top 5 listed, but I've heard you guys talk about like, oh, this is number 8 for me, or oh, this is number 7. Like, how far down on this list do you see significant influence or impact in our strengths versus like the lower half? How far down on the lower half is it like really an ouchie?
Right.
Well,
Go ahead.
I'll take this one. When we do a session, one of the things that we do is something we call the desk. And so, Margie, have you done the full 34 list or just the top 5? You've done the full 34. So the exercise that we do with this is we have people go down and read the description of each one of there's a little blurb description of each one of the strengths. And so we have everybody separate the list into thirds, what's true for them individually. So we're not the arbiters of what is top for you or what is bottom for you, you are. So we have the people and go down and say, your top 5 are usually, yeah, that's me, that's me, that's me. And then usually through the 10, even they'll say that's me. Somewhere between 10 and 15, it starts to drop off from, yeah, that's often me to sometimes me. And we have people draw a line there. Let's just say your line is under number 13. Claim 1 through 13, they're you have them high. Then we have people go to the bottom and say, oh yeah, discipline, not me. Consistency, I'm not a rule follower, not me. I don't like structure. I don't like history. I look at the bottom ones and then I draw the line where like, oh, well, that one's sometimes me. So you're in 3 chunks, your offens, your sometimes, and your rarelys. And then what we ask people to do is really own the ones that are in the often column. And again, that's probably your top 13, 14, whatever it is for you. So we've had people as high as 22. And then the ones that are your rarely column, get help when you need to pull from that. We all have all of these. That's one thing that you should really know. I have discipline. It's my dead last. I pay my taxes. However, I always file an extension. I'm running to the post office at midnight, right? That's me. I get my kids to school, but we're always on 2 wheels, running in late. So I have enough to get by, but I shouldn't choose something that's going to be my thing every day in and out. And so, but you can pull from your top ones. That's going to be like on your desktop. And then the things that are in the middle, you think of them as like in your desk drawer. You can easily fit, you can pull that drawer out, pull them out of a file, you got it. And the things that are in the rarely column, we think of those as down the hall, in a locked cabinet, under a pile of shoes. You can get to them, but it's hard. And you should probably get somebody to go do it, unlock the cabinet for you. And Valerie, do you have anything to add for that? I'm so sorry to
Not at
have
all,
talked over
not
you.
at all. So yeah, so the idea is that you're more than just your top 5. That's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more of this to you, and there's so many nuances as well. So that top chunk is what we want you to own. Look at that, whatever that is for you. It's a great exercise to kind of make that dividing line and figure out what your top third is. And it's different for everyone, like Leanne said. It could be top 10, it could be top 12, it could be top 15, but whatever it is for you, just know that those are your superpowers. That's where you shine the most. That's where you should put your energy into, because that's where you're going to make your biggest impact and you're going to make your biggest contribution and where you're going to be happiest. So the idea is to focus on that, but be aware of what's at the bottom. It used to be that Gallup gave you the whole list. And then they found out that people were just looking at the bottom and going, oh, what's wrong? What's my worst? And how do I fix that? And that's just contrary to everything that strengths is all about. So then they stopped doing that and they made it really expensive for people to have the entire list. Now they've made it affordable again, but they just, encourage everyone to just be aware of your bottoms, partner with people who have that, leverage it if you have to, spend as little time as you can on that stuff, and then look for your top third, because that's where you really want to focus all your time and attention. So does that answer your question? Does that help? Okay, great. Next is discipline. And these are folks who are extremely structured. Leanne likes to take this one because it's her 34. So I'm going to let her talk to it.
Oh, you can talk. Go ahead. You started. Go finish.
Okay. So these are people who love precision. They love discipline. They loved everything to be in order in a specific way. Think about the military or, something like that, because they feel better and they feel more, I think, comfortable in their skin when everything's just so, and they get a lot done because they put things away right back where it was. And, my husband has this number 1 and everything in his life is orderly. So if you're somebody who has to have things put in a certain way, you want all the things lined up right. When he cuts the grass, it looks like he has done it with scissors because everything's so precise. You probably have discipline high. So those are the folks who love to just get everything lined up just so. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Empathy. So this one is one of my 5, and these are folks who have very high emotional intelligence. So they understand how other people feel immediately. They can put themselves in someone else's shoes right away. Sometimes they can, end a sentence before that person does, and they just feel very deeply and they understand very deeply. So they might not agree with you. They might not condone what you did. They might not even actually truly sympathize, but they understand. So they're the ones that people usually love to lie, cry on their shoulder because there's no judgment and they just will understand and they'll have that compassion. So empathies just are very, they're very intuitive. They feel very deeply. My girlfriend who has it high, she, always says you can't cry in front of her. No one cries alone in front of her because she just will immediately start crying.
That's funny. I never heard that one, Valerie. That's really cute.
No one cries alone in my presence is what she always says. Once I gave her strengths and she understood what empathy was, she's like, oh, there you go.
Next up is focus. This is the skill that you want your surgeon to have. So people with high focus are, they're indistractable. When there's something that needs to be done, a goal, a resection, or an organ transplant, these people will not break their gaze. They will not get distracted. It's exactly what it sounds like. They're really good to get to a goal. They keep the group focused. If the group gets off track, they will say, listen, let's focus, people. So it's just really what you would think it is. It's sort of the antithesis of somebody with ADD.
Yeah, usually
I'll
they'll
take this one.
they
Okay,
tune
go ahead.
people out. They'll even, nothing gets, they don't get derailed. They don't let the team get derailed or the people get derailed around them. And sometimes they will actually block everything else out, even people, to get to where they're going.
Next up is futuristic. And so this is the third of what Valerie and I like to refer to as the timeline talents. So we talked about context. Context is, history. We talked about adaptability. People with high adaptability are in the present, they're in the moment. Futuristic is in the future. And so people with high futuristic are our visionaries. They are people who paint a vision for the future. They're alive with possibilities. They are able to see things about what could be. And they paint that picture about what could be. They get excited about what could be, and they bring other people along. These are, it's a very, very powerful leadership skill. I remember just back in my youth, George H.W. Bush used to say, I never was good at the vision thing. Now, he got to be president anyway. However, it's other people that were able to paint pictures about, shining city on the hill and things like that really brought people along to see, like, this is what we could be. Let's do this. So it's a really great leadership ability, but it's that focus on the future. It's about what's happening tomorrow. Let's prepare. Let's move there. Let's go in that direction.
They're visionaries. Harmony. So this is one of mine. And these are people who are peacemakers. So they, will find the smallest bit of consensus among a group of people and bring everybody together. They also can be terrific leaders because they are able to bring everyone together. They don't love conflict. It's interesting because some harmonies will kind of push for conflict because they just want to be the one to kind of get everybody, to smooth it over. And others will just, avoid conflict at all costs. They don't want to ruffle feathers. Why can't we all just get along? Let's just play nice in the sandbox. So those are the, kind of shows up in different ways, but typically they're peacemakers and they are good at really just quieting any kind of volatile emotional situation and bring people along.
What's interesting also about people with high harmony is they often will notice when people in their orbit are in conflict, they'll get those little fine shreds of agreement and they'll start weaving them together. And when they weave them together, they can weave it into something that is cohesive and they get everybody rowing in the same direction. And one of the things that kind of surprised us, but we kind of get it now, as Valerie and I do our work, we have met a lot of people in the C-suite who have harmony as their number one strength. So I see Becky has it as her number one strength. And we thought about it because sometimes harmony is seen as conflict avoidant, and that is one aspect of harmony. But another one is getting everybody going in the same direction. And what a powerful strength for people to have that are running a team. If you get everybody moving together, it's a beautiful thing. Margie, I have it low too. So I always say I love peace, but I'm not afraid to knock a few heads to get there. Next up is ideation. This is my number 3. And these are people with a lot of ideas. So these little kids, as you can see, are thinkers. And so, one of the things, how I can best describe it, how it shows up for me is And this was really a struggle for me as a coach, because when I'm coaching somebody, oftentimes they tell you the things that they're struggling with. And coaches aren't really supposed to just, solve the problem. You're supposed to draw it out of the person. But what happens to me is, it's like a popcorn popping in my brain. So I get one idea and then the next and then the next, and then suddenly it all catches fire. And then I've got like a million ideas popping in my head. And so I have to tame that when I'm coaching, because that's not how we're supposed to do it. But when I'm in a brainstorming session, I have a ton of ideas, and they start coming to me. And Valerie will tell you, I'm sure, in a second about what it's like when she and I are brainstorming. But one of the things about people with high ideation is, as these ideas come to us, we have to get them out. Like, we have to verbalize them. And I will tell you, not all of them are good ideas. Some of them are real stinker of ideas, but we have to get them out. But if you have 100 ideas and 3 of them are good, you're only hitting 3%. What I like to say is you have 3 good ideas, and that's a wonderful thing. And that can be really constructive in what you do. But Valerie has a little story she likes to tell about ideation,
Well, it's just
about
that,
us.
yeah. So Leanne is, she's like, ding, 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 ding. We could do this and this and this and this. And I'm sitting there with, like a piece of paper going, oh my gosh, say that again. Say that one more time. What was that? And I'm trying to write it all down. I'm trying to figure it out. Like, how are we going to do this? So I'm the executor, the practical one. And she's the one who's like the visionary. So sometimes I have to struggle to keep up. But another thing to know about ideations is because they have so many ideas. For those of us who have this low, ideation's my 34, it can be overwhelming sometimes for people when an ideation's in the room and they're just like, bing, 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 you could do this and this and this and this and this and this. And everybody's like, whoa, so just know that if you have ideation high, sometimes that's hard for the people who don't have it high, because it's just a lot coming out all at once, because ideation usually just has to kind of pour them all out on the paper or out in the room. And everybody else may not be able to take so much in. So it's just something to note, kind of like the little yin and yang of it. Includers. These are people who cannot stand for somebody to be left out. They will put their arms around everyone, like you see in this picture, every shape, size, race, ethnicity, whatever. Everybody has a place in my underneath my blanket. So they just wrap their arms around everyone. They want everyone to have a voice. They're typically very kind people, and they just, if somebody's off by themselves, they'll run over, grab their hand and bring them over to the crowd. So they just want everyone to have a place.
And I'm just going to say one more thing about includer. I have not ever, ever, ever met an includer who is not, to their core, a kind, kind, kind person. They are so kind. And so one of the little tricky things about includers, though, is they want everybody in, that sometimes they're not really selective about who's there. So they may get some people in the crowd that don't necessarily like this person or that person, or don't want to show up because they don't like the energy that's going to be created by these 2 people in conflict. Includers don't care. They just want everybody included. And so they can get in a little trouble that way, but it really seems to come from a place of deep kindness. So I love me some good includers in my world.
I think it's funny.
Next up is,
just
go
real
ahead.
quick, I was going to say, the one thing that's kind of funny is, like, if you're inviting an includer to a party, be careful, because they might bring along like 5 other people, like, oh, come on, come, like, and then if you're not an includer and you're the one throwing the party, you're like, oh, okay, sure, so just know that they might want to bring everybody with them. Go ahead.
Next up is individualization. It's a big, long word. And what it means is people who notice what is unique, special about each individual that is in their orbit or they come in contact with. Mary, this is her number 1, Mary Goodman. And so people with high individualization, they see you for you. They are not somebody who's going to generalize about everyone's welcome at DeW. Yeah, and Duffy loves to include people. People with high individualization, though, are very unlikely to generalize and say, oh, like all people of this religion are like this, or all people of this nationality are like that. They're looking at every person uniquely. And one of the things that's interesting about people with high individualization is that they are willing to customize. So this is pretty high for me. And I have 4 daughters. And I have one daughter who I always say she's 25% of my children, but she consumes 75% of my parenting. And I'm okay with that because she needs it. And so people with high consistency may feel like that's not fair because everybody should get the same. But the other children that I have don't require that level of attention from me. And so, I try to make it, understandable for them, and that they're, hopefully not neglected. But sometimes people with high individualization will kind of give that extra care and treatment to people who they feel need it. They're also willing to customize on, whatever it is that's going on. Also tend to be extraordinary gift givers. So whoever said there is, I think we've had somebody said, oh, Mary Goodman, individualization is her number one. People who have high individualization, they notice what somebody likes, needs, and wants, and they will, like, if it's July and they're on vacation and they see something, they might pick it up and say, I'm going to pick up this for Christmas. So they tend to have like a gift inventory hanging around because they're so good at knowing what somebody else might need. So but they're really, interesting people. And Duffy, you're a lousy gift buyer. You're 34 individualization. Oh, Joanne, it's all about her gifts for her. Fantastic. And Mary Goodman, are you a good gift giver? That's her number one. I'm going to guess that she's going to say yes. So that's the energy of individualization.
I am, but I think whatever procrastination is on my like 30, whatever the last number is. So I don't get them ahead of time, but
Okay.
the day before I will get the best gift.
You might have high adaptability. You're going to do it at the end, but you're going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Inputs are people who collect, usually to collect and archive data or information. They will go down rabbit holes. They'll go on a link on the internet, and then another link, and another link leads to another link. And then 4 hours later, they're like, oh my gosh, what happened to my day, right? So they love information. They love kind of to research and dig down and get more information about things. And then they also like input from other people as well. So when they're making a decision, they're going to ask everybody's opinion. But they typically, will archive things either in a notebook or a file or even in their brains. They're usually really good at trivia because they know like a little bit about a lot of things, but they tuck it away. And it is for, reasons like, oh, maybe it'll be helpful to someone someday, or maybe I'll need to refer back to that. So yeah, these people usually hold on to information in some way or form.
And sometimes they get that information for the benefit of other people. I used to have a friend in Chicago, but his breast pocket was filled with articles. And every time I'd see him, he'd go through that little file and say, oh, Leanne, I have an article that I cut out for you. And he'll give it to them. He would give it to me. And it was something that we had talked about or something he knew I was interested in. But that inputs oftentimes collect things for other people. Okay, let me see if I can make this thing move ahead. There we go. Next up is intellection. So these are deep thinkers. These are our philosophers. These are people who love to internally process the information that they pull in from their senses and all the things that they bring in every day. So if you know anybody that needs alone time, there are some people that actually schedule alone time to really think through things and internally process them. So Mary, it's your number two. So you probably love that alone time to really, really think through what it is that you've brought in. Is that, are you nodding? Do you do that alone time thing? Yes. And so deep thinking, internal processing, people with high intellection often have input or learner high as well. Do you know if you have either of those high? Yep. So you have a lot of mental activity going on. Okay, so Joanne has this going on too. That they tend to collect in groups some of these things, but that's the energy of our intellections.
And then learners are folks who are lifelong learners. They can never get enough learning information. They want new things all the time. Their brains are very active. Do not put this person on an assembly line and expect them to put a nut and bolt together like for 8 hours a day, because they will literally lose their minds. These are folks who, they love the process of learning. It's not always about becoming a master at whatever it is that they're learning about. They just want to learn. So sometimes they have a lot of hobbies. They'll learn a little bit about gardening, and then they get done with that and they move on to, karate and whatever, so typically they love to read. Learners usually have a stack of books sitting on their, nightstand, or they love to go to libraries or bookstores. They just love to learn. And so they're they're very quick to get bored, and they're not good when they're bored because then they get impatient. But they love to learn new things, and they get very excited by the process of learning.
Okay. Next up is maximizer, and Valerie and I each have this, as you'll notice, as our number one. I don't know if I'm pointing the right way. But we depict this one with a shiny apple because that's the energy of a maximizer. We like to take things that are already delicious, good, fabulous, and we like to shine them up. We like to take things that are good and bring them to excellence. That's the journey, good to excellent. It's the energy of coaches. Valerie and I were both in a coaching group together, and every single person that asked into the group was a maximizer or had it very high. So again, the journey is from good to great. Maximizers, some of the downsides of maximizers is sometimes we don't know when to stop. We like to tweak and tweak and tweak things because it's not perfectionism per se, but it can look like that. It can also look like competition because some people will see you making things better and better and better and think you're trying to best them, but that's not really what maximizers are doing. It's more of, I want to take this thing in front of me and make it the very best it can be. So the tweaking comes from when we're writing something or putting something together. It's like, ooh, I think I could make it better if I do this or this or this. And so knowing when to stop is a challenge for maximizers. But it is that making things better. Okay. Tom's number one is maximizer. I didn't like that. Oh my gosh, you have a lot of maximizers in your orbit, Anne. You poor thing. We love it. We love it, but it can make people crazy sometimes. Yeah. I'll take this one too. This is in my top 10. Positivity. I have this high. Anne has this high. We are people for whom the glass is half full. Sometimes it's all the way full, and sometimes it's spilling over with joy and delight. We like to be happy. It doesn't mean we're always happy. Sometimes we get upset or annoyed. We will not agree to live there. We want to talk ourselves out of it, find a way to get on the sunny side of the street again and dance in the sunshine. So people with high positivity are we like to lift other people up. We like to keep ourselves uplifted. We like to have fun. We like to laugh. Those are all the things that are about positivity. Anything else, Val?
I was going to say infectious energy. They light up a room. They're the kind of people you love to be around. So they just they always look for the best. They always look for the positive, the bright side. And they like to live on the sunny side of the street.
People call me up when they need a lift. So I know that's what people look for me.
Relator. This is one of my favorites. It's one that's high for me. And these are folks who friend for life. They can be very slow, cautious, sort of socially until they get to know you, because their whole energy is that I want to know you really well. I want you to know me really well. They love to be with people that they know really well. They have a very small inner circle. They can add to it, but they keep it kind of small. And they can relate to anyone. You can find something to talk to you about, to anyone, but they just take a while to bring you into that, into their inner circle. And when they do, it's forever. So relators love to work on projects with a small group of people. If they walk into a room, they love to look for people that they know already. They might be a little intimidated by a room of newcomers, or strangers. But they are very deep, genuine, authentic people. They're very real. They put a lot of value on trust and loyalty. So they do make wonderful friends.
You didn't realize relator is kind of high, number 13. Yeah, relator can be the opposite of woo, and we'll talk about woo in a minute, and we'll draw those distinctions. Responsibility is next. And these are people that you want to be your designated driver. These are the people that you want to watch your kids or your pets. If they say they're going to do something, they're going to do it. If you hand them the football and say, please get it over the goal, and they agree to get it over the goal, nothing is going to stop them. They will carry out their duties. They take emotional ownership of everything that they promise to do. It's a very interesting strength because it operates in a kind of a paradoxical way. People with high responsibility often, first of all, they get very offended if they are micromanaged because They know they're going to do it. If they say they're going to do it, they're going to do it. And so when somebody's micromanaging them, they take offense at that because, why would you think for a second that they wouldn't do it? But yet they have troubles letting go when they have to delegate to somebody else because they're not all the way sure that somebody else is going to do it on time, correctly, and take the ownership that they will. So there's a little bit of a push-pull with high responsibilities. They often also, when nobody else is agreeing to do something, the hand goes up and responsibilities will agree to do it. We always tell our responsibility clients, sit on your hands for 3 awkward minutes whenever somebody is asking for a volunteer, and let somebody else do it, because they tend to overextend themselves and get a little overwhelmed because they're so responsible, and they know that they want to make sure that things are done correctly and right. Becky quit a job because she couldn't take the micromanaging. Yeah, because it's going to be really offensive to you. Like, why would you think that I wouldn't do it?
Right. And they can't say no. This is another problem that sometimes they have is they take on too much. Sometimes they get overburdened because people give them too much, knowing that they will get it done because they're so utterly reliable and responsible and, dedicated and conscientious. So I often tell people, if it's not a hell yeah, it's a no. Because responsibilities will take on way too much, and then they end up burning themselves out or end up in getting just completely stressed out. Restoratives, these are people who are problem solvers. Oh, I'm sorry, Leanne.
You go.
These are problem solvers. These are people who love the journey of something broken to something functional. So unlike Maximizer, who goes from good to great, these guys are going from broken to fixed. But they solve problems. They will see a solution before people even know there's a problem. So their brains work that way. One thing to know about restoratives, though, is that they're very self-critical. They're very hard on themselves because they judge themselves on their ability to cope. They're trying to fix things all the time. So sometimes they struggle a little bit with that. But they are really, really talented at finding solutions or solution oriented.
Okay. Next up is self-assurance. These are people who, as you would expect, have a high level of self-confidence. Their true north is right here. They don't need you to tell them they're awesome because they already know it. They don't need you to pat them on the back. They can do it themselves. And so they walk around this world without self-doubt. Valerie and I tend to envy this particular one because how wonderful it is to not walk around with self-doubt. And so these people have a lot of resilience. They know that they're going to land okay. They know if something doesn't work out, that they will make something work out in the future. So they walk around with that confidence that everything is going to be okay. So really interesting strength.
They don't second guess themselves, which I find very fascinating. I wish I had that. They make a decision, they're good with it, and their attitude is, if it's not the right thing, that's okay. I'll figure something else out. It's all good.
You taking it, Val?
Significance. Take this one. These people love to do important things, and they don't mind everybody about it. They like the applause. They like their name lights. They like the adulation. They just don't want to spend their time doing things that don't things. So it's important to them that whatever they do, it has a lot of meaning. So that's what they want to put out into the world.
And it's important to note that Donald Clifton, the creator of the Clifton Strengths Finder, this was his number one. And you think about it, they want to do something important that's going to make an impact. 30 million plus people have taken Donald Clifton's assessment. And people who've known about this assessment for years, it used to be called the Strengths Finder. They renamed it after Clifton died to the Clifton Strengths Assessment, presumably as a nod to his significance, because he would have liked, as somebody with high significance, he would have liked people to know that he did this. It was his brainchild. So that's the energy of significance. Those of you who know Linda Sherman, Linda with a Y, she has high significance, and she likes to be noticed, and we all know that about her. She's so great in the middle of a crowd. So you know, she likes that applause. She likes the laughter, and she's not shy about it either, which is fantastic. So, so that's the energy of people with high significance. I'm just having the hardest time making this move forward. Okay, strategic. This is my number 2. This is a way of thinking and being that is not learned, it is just inborn. And these are people who have a that they have efficiency toward a goal. So you know, we all know what strategy means, but people with strategic, when a goal is identified, our brains start working immediately, coming up with all the different ways to get to that goal. And so it like those things come almost instantly in the brain, but then people with high strategic have to cull through to figure out which one is going to be the most efficient. So it could be like, okay, if we go that way, we're going to hit the boulder, and we can't hit the boulder, so we're going to try this way. We might go in the opposite direction first. It's going to get us to where we want to be faster than if we go the place that looks the most obvious. So these are the calculations that people with high strategic are doing at all times. So it's interesting because it happens fast, but then there is a little time that you have to take to cull through. People with high strategic sometimes fail to bring other people along with their thinking. So like I just said, people, you know, strategic may go in a direction that doesn't seem logical to those that aren't following that strategic brain. So they go from A to D without telling somebody, I'm going left instead of right here, because left will have us avoiding this roadblock and that roadblock and get us to this pivotal point sooner, and then we can get to the goal sooner. Sometimes other people need to be brought along because they're not getting why we're going someplace that seems antithetical to what should happen. People with high strategic also notice patterns and things. Very, very, it's like it kind of comes out. They notice trends. They notice things that are happening again and again. They may notice numerical patterns or just behavior patterns. And they see those things, and it all goes into the calculus of how to get to that goal the most efficiently. And then the last one is WOO. This is one of my top 5. This is one of Anne's top 5. And this is the only acronym in all of the 34, and it stands for winning others over. And winning others over is just a quality that people have, that they're trying to, we try to reach people by really doing a quick assessment of what it is that they like or that they want, and trying to sort of be open to what they want and be that, you know, kind of make an in with them. So woos tend to be pretty good salespeople because they can reach people because they notice these things about them. People with high woo love to meet people. Like when I go and I see a crowded room, my excitement level goes up because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, do I have time enough to meet all these people? Because I want to get around to all of them, work the room, meet the people, find out what they're all about, and just it gives me tremendous energy. And it can be a foil to relator. Valerie, you want to tell about networking and relator versus woo? Because Valerie has a good perspective on this.
Yeah, so I'm relator high, woo low, and luckily I have a partner like Leanne, because we'll walk into a networking event and she will break the ice and be able to meet a million people, or I will take the conversation really deep. I walk into a room and I'm looking for 3 people to go stand in the corner with and talk to all night. If I go to a party with my husband, I find out what's going on with everyone, and we'll leave the party and he'll have no idea what's happening, you know, with his family or whatever, but I will have had, you know, deep conversations with all these people and know what's really going on. It's kind of an interesting, you know, dichotomy there. But if you're lucky enough to have them both high, like Anne Duffy, this explains a lot, because Anne has this huge, wide social circle, but she has these wonderful, beautiful, deep relationships. So she has the best of both worlds. I do envy that. You know, because relators can be friendly and warm and all of that, but sometimes they are looked at as being kind of aloof and a little distant because they're not quite sure yet. They don't trust yet. It takes them a little time to warm up. But woos are just like, you know, wrap their arms around everyone. Everyone never met a stranger. They'll talk to anybody. I go on trips with Leanne and she's talking up the taxi driver and knows his whole life story by the time we get out of the cab. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, but that's how woos are. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I just don't have that in me as much. And it takes more effort for me to be that outgoing, you know, meet everybody in the room type energy. I'm a little shy. So that's why relators more my thing.
So that's the top 34. And I'm going to try something here. I'm going to try to put in the chat hang on if you will bear with me for a second. I'm going to try to drop in the chat the next little thing that we're going to talk about, and that's the balcony and basements. So
Joanna, I feel you. You were saying that your relator is really high and your woo is really low. Yeah. Do you have that same experience where, you'll end up talking to the same few people, or rather go to dinner with like a few people you know really well than go to some kind of big?
I value more a smaller circle of people and going deep, and trust is super important for me. And if it gets broken, like, it's not a good day. But here's the great part. Shelly Oddie and I are like BFFs, and she's my woo. So like we balance each other out very, very well. Now it all makes sense.
Yes, doesn't it? Exactly. And when you have, if you're a relator, if you can partner with a woo, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Because then you have the best of both, But I feel you. I feel you. We have the same kind of...
And if I do my like I did a forte, and I'm kind of that ambivert in the middle. And so like, I can get introvert or extrovert, but I would prefer the smaller crowd. And
I love to be with my people. Like if I have a couple of really, really good friends and we go do something together, that just makes my heart sing. If I walk into a room and I don't know anyone, I get like, a little nervous and I feel uncomfortable. So it's not where I get energized. So I get it.
Yeah.
Lori's for them. So I'm going to share, and I'm going to start, gosh, I've got to move my little screen there. Okay, let's see, slideshow from current slide. There we go.
It's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So the balcony basements are something that our friends at DeW have really appreciated these the balcony basements in the past. So we always like to make sure that we talk about it. And the balcony, each one of these strengths has a high side and a low side, a bright side and a dark side. Just like all things, we are, it's a yin and a yang, and a raw and mature. These are all the names that we use about what is the great things about each of our strengths, and they all come, if sometimes too much of a good thing isn't such a good thing. And so what's going to show up in the chat, hopefully, is something that looks like this. And this is just for you all to work on. You're on your own. And if it does not show up in the chat, we'll ask Tari to put it somewhere on the website so that you all can download it and see and work through it. But what we ask you to do for this exercise is to find your top 5 or your top chunk, whatever it is, and read the phrases both in the balcony and in the basement. Again, the balcony is the bright side, the high side, the great side. The basement is the side that you want to that this strength can show up like, and you want to avoid it. So I'll talk about achiever because it's right at the top there. Achievers are tireless. They're tireless workers. They have a really strong work ethic. They lead by examples. They're go-getters. They're hungry. They like to complete things. They like to check them off. They get things done. They're like a really powerful, get it done sort of energy. In the basement, achievers can be a little unbalanced because they focus so much on getting the work done that sometimes they don't have that balance in life of just enjoyment. They can get overcommitted. They can get into a situation where they have a hard time saying no. Sometimes they burn the candle at both ends, where they overdo it and they don't give themselves a break. They can be hyper concentrated on work and they can't relax. So one of the things that we would invite people to do in this exercise is to read through all of those for your top ones, whatever it is that you want to claim as your top superpower strengths, and circle the ones that are true for you. You're going to probably have some in the balcony, some in the basement, not all. Sometimes you may be really evolved and have all balcony ones. But it's the whole purpose of this exercise is all about awareness. We want everybody here to be very self-aware and to know that when you're embarking on self-improvement, rather than look at your number 34, like for instance, my discipline, and say, I'm going to pour myself into discipline. I'm going to pour myself into becoming more disciplined. You're going to get very, very low results by doing that. You want to stick with your strengths, stick with those things that you're already good at, but look at your basement. And when you see yourself going into a basement behavior, say, you know what, I'm going to get out of that basement. I'm going to go to the balcony, try to stay in the balcony of all your strengths. That's where you're going to really, really see improvement. You're going to really see results when you are in the balcony. And Valerie, I can't see you on my group of people. Do you have anything to add to that? Are you here?
I'm here. I'm here. Um,
Okay.
yes, I would just say, think about it in terms of like a football team. If you have a star quarterback, are you going to have him spend his time kicking? No. You're going to have that guy on the field or, working on those throws, working on his plays, running plays with the rest of the guys. He doesn't need to be the kicker. That's not what he's there to do. That's not his job in life, right? So it's the same kind of concept. If you have something special about you, that's what you tap into. And the balcony and basement can kind of show you sometimes when we're not productive, when we're off-putting to somebody, or we're not getting the results we want. It's not being at the base, if not being in the bottom of our list, maybe it's not one of your 34 that you're stuck in. It might be that you're stuck in your basement of one of your top talents. So it's just another piece of awareness. And sometimes it really has the light bulbs that come on because we don't realize that these can be barrier labels, or they can be ways that people can perceive us, or they can get in our way because we're blind to them. So it can be a blind spot as well. So it's a very worthwhile exercise just for the sake of, giving that red flag to yourself when you know that you're spiraling down. When my achiever is out of control, I can get kind of irritable and I can get really frustrated. And when Leanne sees that, she's like, okay, I got to step up and give you some more stuff to do because you're having a hard time. Or, we laugh about it all the time. I'll say, oh, I'm sorry, my achiever's in the basement right now. But it gives you a way to kind of just snap yourself out of it and realize what's going on.
Great. Thank you, Valerie. Mm-hmm. And if you're at the last DeW retreat, you'll know that we spent a lot of time on the behavior traits of the 4 domains. So just like we mentioned before, Gallup has put these into all the strengths into 4 different categories. So we're just going to go through what the behavior traits are. So that page 21, if you did the whole 34 list, there's a wonderful report. That's a 25-page report. On page 21, it shows you your domains in order. And what it reads left to right. There's a little bar on that page that reads left to right. If you're at the DeW retreat and you had done the 34, that little bar was at the top of your name tag. And so that's what the colors are all about. And so Valerie is her background color on her background is blue because she's primarily a relationship builder. Mine is yellow because I'm primarily an influencer. And so we're going to go through what the behavior traits of these are. So Valerie, you take it away with executor.
Sure. So just as a reminder, because you guys hopefully remember this from the retreat, but maybe not. Executors are the get it done girls and guys. They're the ones who just work tirelessly to get things done. They make the spreadsheets, they do the reports, they, do the planning of events, they complete the to-dos. They're just the people who are getting the things done and accomplished. So they're always in action in that regard.
Influencers are, I always say that influencers tend to live out loud. They take charge, they speak up, you kind of know when they're in the room. They influence other people. So what they do is, rather than just doing everything themselves, their superpower is getting other people excited and inspiring them to change behaviors or inspiring them to do something else. So they influence others to take action. They sell their ideas. They can be quick to get started, forceful with opinions. They strive for excellence. They get others excited about joining their big plans. But in some, they tend to get noticed and inspire others to change behaviors.
And the relationship builders are just what you would think. They're the glue that hold everyone together. They're other oriented. They're always focusing on other people. So they're usually the ones who are bringing groups of people together. They're building the bridges. They're helping others to do things. They're helping to take care of others. They're thinking about others. They're just the glue that binds everyone together.
And then strategic thinkers. I don't like the name of this category because I think it's just really the thinkers, because strategic is one of them, but it's not all thinkers have that strategic energy. But at any rate, the thinkers, they think of possibilities. This is all mentally active people. They think of possibilities, they absorb and analyze information, they inform better decisions, they consider what could be. They might be keeping in the mind the past or the future, collecting knowledge and information, learning and teaching, choosing the best strategies to achieve goals, developing new ideas. They lead with their minds. So that's what their superpower is, leading with their minds. And then this is how all the strengths really line up with of the 34. So
keep in mind, everybody, that your number one is with your dominant domain. So as you can tell, I have a blue background. I lead relationship building, but my number one talent is maximizer, which is a yellow. So just because number one is one color doesn't mean that that's what you lead with. And what you lead with is the domain that really is where you shine. That's what your majority of your talents line up, your top talents, or it's the power of those ones. Like if you have a lot of yellows that are really strong, chances are you have your dominant domain is yellow. But my maximizer is a yellow, and I absolutely show up that way every single moment of my life. However, the way I influence people is through my relationship building. Those talents are the ways that I help to influence others. So I'm not a live out loud type. I'm not a yellow, but I do have that yellow piece in me, obviously. I just do it through a different set of talents. So it's something to keep in mind. There's a definite nuance there. I had somebody who had harmony number one, and she couldn't understand it, and she was very upset, but she actually led with strategic thinking. And when I explained this whole thing to her, she's like, oh, now I get it. Because she always says, why can't we all get along? Like that is her theme. I'm like, how can you not see that that's harmony? But what was hanging her up is that she didn't feel like a relationship builder because she was always in her head all the time. She led with the greens. She was a strategic thinker. So she was having like this disconnect. And I try to explain to her, it doesn't matter what color your number one is. What you lead with is really more important. I lead with relationship building and executing. So those are the types of roles I need. If you want somebody who's a visionary, who's a live out loud person, I'm not your girl. But if you want somebody who gets stuff done and builds bridges, I can do that in spades. So I know that those are the places I need to put myself in order to set myself up for success.
And I lead with influencing, and relationship building is next, and strategic thinking, they kind of fight for second place. They're pretty even, but my lineup is influencing, relationship building, strategic thinking, and dead last for me is executing. And that's why my relationship with Valerie works so well, because she's excellent at the thing that I am not as good at. And so she really helps get me hitting deadlines. She gets me doing what I need to be doing. She'll nudge me in the nicest of ways when I need to be doing something differently. And I really appreciate her. And Anne we got a couple of things in the chat to draw your attention to. Anne has written page 21 of your assessment is where you find out where your lineup is. So if you're able to, if you have it in front of you or if you have it on your screen, go down to page 21 of the assessment and you'll see that bar. If you were at the retreat and you had put in your results on time, you would have had a bar at the top of your name tag and in your lineup of strengths. And you'll see like what that bar looks like. And the width is as important as the order. So if you are like a big influence, you might have a big wide yellow bar and then like small other things. But it's just very interesting to see how people line up. But whatever it is that you can see from that you do well, whatever your dominant domain is, it's really good if you can direct your life so that the things that you do are calling on those strengths. And when you're calling on those strengths, you're going to show up in ways that are just easy for you. And I've also noticed that Tari she linked the balcony basement sheet in the chat. So you will be able to download that if you'd like. It's on a Google Drive. So if you want to click on that and get that, that's a little homework for you. So you can download that document and you can look at the phrases under the balconies and basements and see where you are on your bright side and where you are on the side that you don't want to live. And that can direct your behaviors and your thinking. So does anybody have any questions? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Valerie.
That's okay. We keep jumping over each other because we can't see each other very well. Just real quick, one other thing I'll mention about this chart. It's also really helpful if you're putting a team together, because we really want somebody in each column, right, represented. You want each column represented on a team to have that perfect balance. In certain areas, we always talk about you don't have to have a perfect balance on teams, but in an ideal world, if you could, you would, right? So if you are putting a team together and you see that everybody on the team is a blue, but there are no yellows, you might want to add a yellow to the group. You know what I'm saying? Like, this can be a very helpful strategic piece if you're trying to put a team together. Look what look at for somebody who's got what you don't have. Is every color represented? Do we have somebody who's a visionary? Do we have somebody who can build the relationships? Do we have somebody who can get the message out to the masses? Do we have somebody who's going to get the work done? Great if we have a bunch of greens, but if we don't have any purples, nothing's getting done. So, could be really helpful if you're looking at that piece, if you're trying to build a team or you're working with a group of people. How are we lining up? Is everybody doing what they're called to do? And that's maybe a thing to think about. What are you called to do? Be intentional about where you're placing people and what they're doing. Okay, Joanna, you have a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to, and you might have answered this a long time ago and I didn't hear it, but is there a recommendation of retaking this assessment over like time, or is this kind of like, these are like your cores and it's not going to really shift?
Yeah, usually what we say, people ask us this all the time. If I take it again, will I get a different result? And in fact, we did a session where the CEO was kind of skeptical about this whole thing. So he literally took the test over again just to see if he could prove us wrong. And it was exactly the same results. So it was kind of funny. But what happens is it can shift, depending on what's going on in your life. Or you're looking at it from a different lens. Say the first day you took it, or the first time you took it, you were a mom staying at home. And then the next time you took it, you are the owner of your own company and you're, in a different place in your life. So certain things can color your results. But the top third that we were talking about, that top chunk, your real powerhouse talents are pretty much going to all be the same. They may move around a little bit. 2 might become 10 or 3 might become 7, but that really doesn't matter what the order is. What matters is that you embrace those top third, because that's really where you shine and that's really what matters. But sometimes drastic things can happen and it will flip it. Usually one won't go down to the bottom and vice versa. But we did have that happen with one guy we knew. He started out his life as a harmony. 20 years later, he took it and harmony was number 34. And we're like, this is crazy. This never happens. What's going on with you? And he said, well, when I took it the second time, I was going through a terrible divorce and I don't feel harmonious at all. So that was understandable, right? That he just was going through a terrible time in his life and harmony just wasn't the thing that was helping him get through it. So he couldn't see that part of himself. He wasn't utilizing that part of himself. Different things can happen in your life and you'll pull on different talents because you have to. That might not be what your natural go-to is, but you might have to pull it out of there, out of that drawer, because it's what's helping you get through the day. So typically the first time you take it is the purest form, and Gallup says that it really is the one you should stick with. But if you feel like you didn't really take your time with your assessment, or you really didn't pay attention to what you were saying, or you really didn't give it justice, you might want to do it again just to see. But typically it won't change a tremendous amount. It will, some things may shift around, but your top third will probably stay your top third.
Yeah. No, I think this pretty well nailed it. I just was curious because I did it at the end of 2020 is when I took mine.
Right. Yeah, it can change, but typically you are who you are. And if you look back on your life, we often have this exercise for people to do too. Think about all the successes you've had in your life. Think about what talents were showing up, and that will tell you something. Also think about the times where you weren't at your best. What was showing up then? And you'll see probably that your lesser talents were there, or your high talents were there. Your strengths were there. So it's one of those things that even as children, you can see these different traits, right? I'm sure anyone who has a child can look at some of these things and say, yep, that kid's a command, or yep, that kid's an analytical, or yep, whatever. Like, that's a positivity, because these are the way we're wired. We're born this way. And yes, there's the nurture nature thing, but we're literally born and wired with these things in our brains, hardwired. So, some of that is just going to be your DNA. basically. So anyway, sorry, didn't mean to go off on a tangent.
That's okay. And this is something that we always shout out at the DeW retreats. Um, we have this on here because it's a really, really important concept. We are not good at everything, not good at everything. And so if somebody says to me, Leanne, why are you always running late? Why can't you get stuff in on time? Why? My answer is I have other gifts. Like my discipline is not my giftedness, and I have other gifts. So we always tell people, like when somebody, is hoping that you're a certain way and you're not that way, your answer can be, I have other gifts. And so we want you to embrace that the gifts you have are the gifts you have, and that they're beautiful gifts. And so really learn to appreciate them and know that you don't have to have all the gifts to be gifted. And so really lean into the ones you have, like Anne just put in the chat.
Any other questions? Anybody else? Anyone?
Yeah, and then, one of the concepts also we want to leave you with is master your strengths, outsource your weaknesses. So just like we said, like when, for me, kind of producing is not my jam. So when something has to be done, I outsource it. For instance, I know I mentioned taxes. I studied accounting. I know how to do taxes. I hire an accountant because like putting it all together, I will procrastinate it till the cows come home and I won't get it done on time. So I have to outsource things that I'm not going to be good at. And that's the energy. Like there's going to be things that are not your jam. Outsource them, hire somebody to do it. It's going to make you so much happier because that little bit of money or time or whatever that you save is going to be, it's going to be good for you. So that's all I have. Valerie, do you have anything to add?
One closing thought on that is that remember that you saying no lets someone else say yes. And maybe that's the gift to them, that they get a chance to shine, that they get a chance to use whatever gift is special about them. So I always say that to people, you're saying no, let someone else say yes. So don't feel guilty. Don't take on something that's just, if it feels, God, oh no, another thing, like if that's it, don't should on yourselves. If it feels like a should, it's probably not the right answer. So really it's a hell yeah, or it's a no. And I mean that, like, check your gut. But it's been a joy being with all of you. We love DEWs, love you. Have a wonderful, wonderful holiday and take good care of yourselves and live your strengths. They're beautiful.